Okay, so we have our barn structure now with the roof. We're going to put a fence in 2-point perspective. And so we got to think about all the fence posts are going to be perpendicular, going 90 degrees to your horizon line. And so we have our horizon line back over here. And so let's go 90 degrees. And I'm going to put the fence post just a little bit to the right of this, the end of this barn here. Okay, and then I'll show you what it looks like, but the first thing we want to do is get the vertical part in there, okay? And so we're going to go 90 degrees and just a little bit, probably a little bit above this, this first perspective line here that we did for the bottom. Let's go ahead and put a vertical line, perpendicular line, line it up. Okay, and so you can go just a little bit above here, above that perspective line, okay? And then what we'll need to do from here, right, is go to the corners. Let's first determine the width though. And so from the top and the bottom, we're gonna go back to VP 1 and 2. We don't want it too wide to start, so I'll just go maybe, let's see, maybe about a 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch even. Just a little bit here. Okay, and then I'm going to go a little bit less going back to the vanishing point number 2. We'll see just a little bit less of that fence post. We are seeing the corner, but because of the way that we're viewing this, and we're seeing more of this side, this part down here will be a little bit longer. So now go back perpendicular to your horizon line. And I can see I drew that a little crooked. Try it one more time, perpendicular to your horizon line, and I can see it's going to be real close to where the edge of the of that structure is. So artistically, I'm thinking, you know, it should work, but you might want to consider possibly moving it just to the side a little bit. Go up just like that, and then I'm going to go back to my vanishing point number 1. And then from here, I also need to draw it from that corner back to VP number 2. And then drop a perpendicular line down. Remember, this part we're not seeing quite as much on this part of the fence. Something like that. And then from the corners here and here, we know what to do. We're going to go back to our vanishing point. So first vanishing point number 2. Now we're barely going to see the top of this fence post. It'll be just a tiny bit that we see. That's fine. Just see just a tiny bit of the top right there. And then from we want to determine how long to make this this fence. And so we'll put 3 fence posts in there. And we kind of want to space them out, and so it gets a little smaller as it goes down because of the perspective. So what I'll probably do is maybe about 2.5 inches or so back towards the vanishing point. Remember, the bottom of the fence post will be in line with the other one, so I'll put a dotted line here so we can see it. Go over maybe 2.5 inches or so to find the next part. And I'm going to drop a perpendicular line down. And how do we know how far down? Well, if we draw a perspective line from, that's why once you get that first post, you can just start making perspective lines with dotted lines, and we can see exactly how high to make the next post. So perpendicular line, and then we'll go up right into that dotted line up there. Right here, okay? And then we'll also put a little bit of a side part. It's gonna be a little smaller than this part. I measured mine, mine's about a little bit less than 3/4 maybe of an inch. And so I would like to make the next one a little smaller than that, since it is going back. And so maybe I'll make this one just about 1/2 of an inch, and then go vertical 90 degrees to your, not from your perspective line, but from your horizon line, 90 degrees right to here. And then I need a little bit going back to the other side. And so that will also be 90 degrees to your horizon line. Right to here. And then from each corner, we're going to see just a little bit of the top part of the fence. And so draw your lines in there. Back to my vanishing points. And then from these corners, just a tiny bit. Just happen. Now, if you wanted to see more of the top of the fence post, you could just drop the fence post down just a little bit, and then you'd see more of that. Actually, it's more like that. We're seeing just a tiny bit of the top. And fill that part in there. Okay, and then let's have one more part back here, and that part is the spacing in between is also going to be just a little bit smaller. So we'll maybe go over from the corner here of that, maybe go over to the first line, maybe 1.25 inches or something. So it's just in front of this part of the barn. Okay, and so take my perpendicular line, go up to the perspective line here. Okay, because that's where we know the height is going to be. And then let's follow the same thing. So make this part just a little bit smaller. This part was 1/2 inch, and so make it a little bit more than 1/4 inch or so. Go ahead and put your lines in there. And the bottom part of the fence is going to go back to the vanishing point 2, number 2 over here, and the other one to vanishing point number 1. Okay, and then from the top here, same thing, VP number 2, or VP1, VP2, and we'll finish that part of the fence. And then once again, just a tiny, tiny bit we see of the top there, almost where you can't see it at all. And so line up the corner, go back to the vanishing point. Okay, yeah, barely see that top part at all. Okay, so now we have the 3 fence posts. We're going to need to put the other lines of wood in there. But let's first, just because there's so many lines, let's erase some of these perspective lines that we drew. With something like this, you want to draw lightly. I'm drawing darker for the demonstration, but you want to draw lightly because we're going to be erasing a lot of things over and over. Any part where the barn goes through the fence post, you can erase that as well. Okay. Good. Now, before we get too far along with that, you want to ask yourself, okay, how about the fence post going the other way? It wouldn't make sense if you just had a fence going one way, so let's just put a few more of those in. And so perspective line going back from this corner here would be helpful. Okay. And then this one, the distance here was getting shorter, but it's going to be getting shorter a lot faster going the other way just because of the perspective that we're looking at here. And so the first part, if I measured the first part distance, it would be a little bit over 2.5 or something to this one. Let's go maybe an inch less than that to start. And so if I measure kind of from maybe the middle of this, maybe just like 1.25 inches to that first one. And then it's going to even get smaller and smaller, so I'm going to make a mark right here. And then let's just repeat these steps here. Draw your perpendicular line. Where do we stop? Well, you stop right at that other perspective line. I'll put the dotted line here. Okay, and then we're still seeing a little bit of the fence, and so we're going to put a little bit down over here. I think I'm going to make mine just a tiny bit bigger. I'm going to go, now that I look at it, right about here. Okay. And then I'll put, for that first part of the fence, which is right here, that's going to have to go back to the vanishing point, number 1, okay, like that, going in this direction here. How wide do you make it? Well, you got to make it maybe a little bit less than this part, so let's do about almost half of that part. So since that was 1/2 inch wide, I'll do 1/4 of an inch. Now, there are formulas for all of this kind of stuff, but right now we're just, for the sake of time and all of that, we're just kind of eyeballing it. Okay. Make sure that this corner goes back to VP1, and then we're also going to need a corner going in the other direction here, and so I'll probably just make that around the same size. Line up your perspective line. Go back up, and then from the corner here, okay, then what do we do with that corner? Well, that corner has to go back to the vanishing point, number 1, just like we did. And then it will stop right there, and then the other part, vanishing point number 2. And then connect the top parts. This corner and this corner. Okay. And let's put one more fence post in there. And I think this one, it's because it's getting smaller, it's almost this side part here is almost going to be touching because it's getting, so I'm just going to put it right next to it, right over here. Let's drop a perspective line down, or actually this will be the vertical part, okay. Let's also drop a vertical line next to it as well. So we're going to draw 3 lines here. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. And then from this corner, that's the part that has to go back to VP number 1. So that middle line. So we had 3 lines. The middle line goes back to VP1, and we can erase that bottom part like that. Let me get this line a little bit darker so we can see it. All right, and then the other line will go back to VP number 2. And then same thing, let's finish the top and the bottom part. And so from the top, draw a line back to VP1, VP2, and then barely see the top. It's always good to have a sharp pencil with this. And then here. Okay. All right, and then we can erase our perspective lines. Okay, and so we have our fence. Now, we're going to put in 3 different 2x4s, or maybe it would be 4x8s, something like that. And well, let's determine how wide to make these. We're going to see a little bit of the end on each of them. And so I think just to start, let's make them about maybe 1/2 inch or so. So from this part here, I'm going to mark down about 1/2 inch. This is going to be the bottom part of my my board, and I want to go over just a little bit, not right on the line, so we can see the edge of the board. And so let's go ahead from about 1.5 inches down or so. You're going to draw a line all the way back to here. Okay? And then I didn't quite go over. It's a little bit to the side, you can see over here. And then also around the top of the fence, let's draw a line, and it's pretty much going to match up just below the line that we drew earlier. Okay, so we have that line, and then it's helpful once I draw that line if I erase the other part of the fence so I don't get too confused, and then I can kind of see the other part of the fence post, and I can see exactly what I'm doing here. And I'll redraw this one so we can see it. Okay, so that part's to here. This other part here. And we'll kind of make this look like a little bit more worn, and so maybe it had the end on it is, you know, not as perfect as it might be. And so over here we have just a little bit of an end, and that end is going to go back to VP number 2. Just a little line back to VP2, and then we have that's just the end part there of the board. That's a nice little detail, because if you don't do that, the board is just going to seem like it's paper thin. And we don't want to do that, obviously. Okay, now let's do 3 more parts. We're going to do one from here to here, and then also some boards going down. So maybe come over, so you leave just a little space after this so we can see the edge. And I'm going to go down until it meets the same width. Okay, so let's drop our perspective line, because we're assuming we're building with the same size boards. Then over here, I'm going to do a line back to the vanishing point, just like we did before. And stop at that last board back here, and then put one on the top. Okay. And then as far as the seeing the edge a little bit, you can just draw that line back to your VP1 and VP2. And there'll be just a little bit of a corner there. And actually, I'll go a little bit further, and then we can erase the fence in the background. That way we can get a good idea of kind of what we're making here. Okay. And then we're seeing just the edge of the board. I'm going to go out just a tiny bit, out, vertical. Okay. So we have that edge there. And then let's put two more boards in there. And so I'm going to go down a little bit from the first one and maybe go down half an inch or so. And that's where I'll start the next one. And so I've just leave a little space here. I first try to make it around the same size to start, and then draw a line back to your VP and stop at the last board over there. Back to the VP. Stop at the last board. Same thing, make a little bit of an edge, so you're going to have this corner is going to go back to VP2. Same with that corner. Back to VP number 2. And then we can draw a perpendicular line. That way it's just a little bit of an edge on it. And then from the top, this time we'll see it, there's a corner part here. And from that corner, we'll draw a line also back to your vanishing point. That way we see just the edge of that 4x8. And then I'm going to erase the fence post lines. Erase this part. Okay. So it's getting there. Let's just keep going. Do our last boards. Try to think about the spacing that we're doing. We want to have kind of around the same spacing. So if the spacing is 1/4 of an inch or so, or 1/2 of an inch, let's go down also 1/2 of an inch or so. So I'm going to do that. Start my last board. And I won't quite go down to the very bottom. I'll leave a little space on the very bottom so we can see the bottom of the fence. And then I want that same detail there where we can see, the end of the board. And so from here, this corner will go to vanishing point 2. Vanishing point number 2. Perpendicular line. And then from this corner, line it back up to your VP. And we can see that edge there. Go ahead and erase. And then I think I'll kind of just darken up some of the fence post lines in the back because some of them got erased, so I can just kind of darken some of those up here. We also want to finish our fence on the right side here. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and pick up on the corner there. And I will have my perpendicular line to start. Get about the same size. Perspective line back to the VP, all the way down to the